Thank you very much. So this actually won't be quite as much running around as with the lemonade trading game, but it is definitely an audience participation. I'm going to be asking for your opinions on lots of things. Don't be afraid to volunteer something, even if you're not quite sure that it's right. I can work off of anything and be able to cover the topic as well. So anyway, you'll know when it's time, and appreciate all of your participation as well. Okay, so this is business ethics. So first of all, what are ethics? It could be moral principles that govern a person's or a group's behavior, something that helps you decide what to do when you're given a choice of different things that are possible. It could also be the rules of conduct recognized in respect to a particular class of human actions or a particular group or culture. So for example, it could be medical ethics. What do people in the medical profession do under certain circumstances? It could be Christian ethics, such as we've talked about here, and business ethics as well. And that's what I'm going to focus on today, is the ethics of business. So some of the discussion topics that we'll cover. Is it ethical for a business to seek a higher profit? Some would say no, actually. Is it greedy if it does? Can profits be too high? Should profits be redistributed from companies that make a lot to companies who don't make very much at all and maybe lose money? Should the federal minimum wage be raised to $15 an hour? Many people would consider this an ethical question and something that businesses should actually be required to do. Lastly, we'll do You Be the Boss, which is a situation that actually does occur quite often, and we'll give you a chance to think about how would you handle this particular situation, and then we'll wrap up at the end. Okay, so first of all, what is a business? What's a business? Yes?
Someone who realizes they have something to offer to people, so they sell it for their profit.
Okay, so someone who has something that they're willing to produce and try to sell it for a profit. Okay, all right. Anything to add to that?
I guess it's more formal way of trading.
Okay, could involve certainly a formal way of trading as well. So I would say generically it's one or more people, doesn't have to be one person, could be one or more people producing a product and trying to sell it in a market to customers. Trying to sell it in a market to customers. Okay, so what is a business purpose? What is the purpose of a business? And this actually could be debated quite a while, but yeah, what's your thought? What's the business purpose?
To make profit.
To make a profit, okay?
To provide a service.
To provide a service, okay? Yes?
To survive.
To survive. And how do you define survive?
It can continue to operate, pay its expenses, earn revenue,
And continue on day after day, week after week, year after year, and so on. Okay, anything else to add? Yes? Customer satisfaction. And how does that become part of the business purpose?
Well, it should be their number one priority because the customers are ultimately deciding their survival, their profit, and everything.
Because without a customer, you're not going to survive. We're going to talk a lot about that. Yes?
create jobs.
Create jobs, okay? All right. I would suggest it's to make a profit over the long run by selling products for a higher price than the cost to produce. And pretty much everything that you all said is incorporated in those thoughts there. All right, so I call this the business cash cycle. I want to talk about this because this actually has got a lot of information here. So every business has to produce a product. That product could be a good, something tangible that you take with you after you've exchanged your money, or it could be a service. Service is something that a business does for you in return for the money that you're paying for it. So every business produces a product. Could be a good, could be a service, which they hope to sell to a customer in a market. If they are successful, the customer gives them money, which the business then turns around and uses to purchase resources. There are three types of resources. Could be human resources, so these are the employees of the business that the business pays to produce the product. It could be all of the materials that are required to produce that product. If I have a pizza business, then the materials would be the dough, it would be the tomato sauce, the pepperonis, everything else that goes into cheese to make that pizza. And then lastly would be the capital resources, which are the machines, tools, equipment, things that are used to make the product, but they're not the product themselves. So they're necessary, but they're not part of the product. So those are all combined by the business to produce this product, which then they attempt to sell to the customer, and hopefully the cycle goes around and around. If they are successful in selling to the customer, the money they receive from the customer is called the sales revenue. The money that they spend on resources is called expenses. If there's anything left over, hopefully there is, that's called a profit. In the United States, every business pays an income tax. It's approximately 25%, 21% to the federal government, 4% on average to state and local governments. And then what's left over would be called profit after tax. If you listen to a business report, sometimes that's referred to as net income, sometimes it's referred to as earnings, but they're all the same thing. It's the profit, what's left over after paying all taxes. Okay, so that is the business cash cycle. So now the question is, what does every business require to be successful? What does every business require to be successful? What do you think? Yes?
Something that the people want.
Something that the people want to buy. Okay? Yes?
Well, does it require everything on that screen?
Yes, it certainly does require a product. It needs a customer. It needs resources and so on. But even beyond that, something extra. Yes?
The market, supply and demand.
Okay, so supply and demand will definitely impact the resources and the prices that they pay, as well as the price that they're able to get. Yes?
Quality.
Tell me about quality. What about quality?
You need to have things that are quality, otherwise people aren't going to buy from you or use your service again because they know you did a bad job or this product broke really fast or something, and they don't want to come back or they don't suggest you to other people and it doesn't book itself and it just kind of crumbles.
So exactly all of that. I don't know if you all could hear that, but the essence of it was that every business has to have some kind of quality to their product in order to convince the customer to purchase from them. Because why do they need to convince the customer?
Because if you convince a customer that is satisfied with their purchase, then will hire you or buy your product again, and then they will, if they're satisfied, they will also suggest it.
Wait, let him finish. Okay. All right, so you need that customer. The customer has to buy from you. Well, they don't have to buy from you. You have to persuade them to buy from you because they have choices. They can go elsewhere or they can decide not to spend their money at all. Yes?
Why is it that people have a tendency to choose something that's cheap over something that's better in quality that'll last longer?
Okay, so the question is, why do some people choose something that is cheaper even though it doesn't last as long? Okay, so let me answer that in the next minute. I would suggest that what every business needs is an idea. They have to have something that will persuade the customer to buy the product from them as opposed to competition or somebody else. Now, generally, that's going to be something to do with quality, or it could be a lower price. Quality can be any of many, many, many things. It could be it is stronger. It could be that it's lighter. It could be it's heavier. It's smaller. It's larger. It's red. It's blue. You're open late at night. You deliver. Something is different about your product that then persuades the customer to buy from you. Or, of course, it could be a lower price. Could the idea be for a lower quality product? And if so, why? Could it be for a lower quality? Now, perhaps answer. See, one of you asked that question. Yeah. Could their idea be for a lower quality product? Yes.
Yes, because if it's lower quality, they can sell it for much cheaper, which makes more people think, oh, it's cheaper, I should go buy that.
And that's exactly right. The reason that they would offer a lower quality product is because they're going to offer it generally at a lower price. Why would they want to do that? Yes.
So, for example, you can get Twizzlers, which I mean most people like, or you can get Red Vines, and a lot of people I meet don't like that.
Mhm.
But Red Vines are actually a lot cheaper than Twizzlers half of the time, because Twizzlers are harder to make, they're tastier. But Red Vines, they can make a massive amount and trade it out.
And so building on that then, so a product could be offered at a lower quality because they're going to sell it for a lower price. Now the thing to remember though is lower quality does not mean no quality, right? It means a lower quality. So if someone doesn't have enough money to pay for the product that's got 5 features about it, maybe they do have enough money and they're willing to spend their scarce money on something that only has 3 qualities to it. So it's all about the customer. It's all about each business having to understand the quality and price trade-off for each of their customers. Because as a business person, if I want to be successful, I have to produce a product that meets your needs at a price that you're willing to pay. Your needs at a price you're willing to pay, yours, and everybody's there. Everybody gets the chance to choose, so therefore I have to be interested in all of my customers. Yes?
Would built-in obsolescence be considered part of that lower quality?
Well, I would say it's certainly something that every customer should take into account when they're buying the product. And so if a business builds in It's called built-in obsolescence, which means that basically it's built such that it's going to be no longer functioning after a certain period of time, 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it might be. A competitive advantage for somebody else would be to say, I'm going to offer a product and put a 5-year guarantee on it or a long-term warranty. And so that's the way competition would combat that product. And then again, it's up to the customer to decide. That's a much preferred way of doing business rather than the government simply mandate that the product must last for 5 years. Because now if a business is required to make a product that's going to last for 5 years, that's going to cost their extra money. And there will be, or there might be, customers that would say, you know what, I don't really need it to last 5 years. I don't want to pay the high price for that. Please give me the option to buy a product that's only going to last 2 or 3 years for whatever reason. The customer should decide. We don't want government to be involved and set those kinds of standards. Yes?
I was just thinking of the fountain pens that we used to buy for $30 and $50.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody came up with the idea of big pens that are very, very cheap, but inexpensive and also cheap, but they do the job, and you can throw them away or lose them, and it's no big deal.
And that's an excellent example. So we have the example that she was bringing up is we used to have, and actually you can still buy very, very expensive, stylish pens, probably got somebody's famous name on them, and they cost $30 or $50. But on the other hand, if all you want is a functioning pen, you can easily go into a market and buy one for 99 cents or $4.99 or whatever the price might be. And again, the customer making that choice between quality and price. That's what we're looking for in a well-functioning economy. So, to conclude on this, no business can be successful without meeting customer needs. Differentiation requires understanding the quality-price trade-off. And I would call that one of the beauties of capitalism. Why is it that is in essence of capitalism? Because what's required here is for every business to understand each and every one of their customers. Otherwise, that customer is free to go elsewhere. Because that is a feature of capitalism, in that every customer has a choice on whether they want to buy that product or buy somebody else's product. Notice there are a number of other choices that are involved in capitalism as well. I, as a business, also can decide what product I want to offer, what price I want to sell it for, what quality I want to offer, and so on. I also can decide who do I want to hire, given their skills, time, and experience that they want to provide to me, how much do I want to pay them, and every one of you as a potential employee also has the ability to decide where do you want to work and what are you willing to accept for pay in return for what it is you can provide to the business. Also, too, notice that since every customer has a choice on whether they want to buy that product, no customer will pay this price unless they feel the value for that product is higher than that price. And when they do so and they buy the product, well, of course, they're making a lot of value. But one of the awesome aspects of capitalism is that notice what happens on the business side. When the business sells that product for a particular price, it only does so because its costs are less than that. Of course, the difference between cost and price is their profit. But what do these costs represent? In a free market capitalist society, those costs represent the price that's required for each of the resources that are there. And in a free market economy where supply and demand sets prices, guarantees that everything is going to its highest and best use within that society. So therefore, when the business can combine resources that are otherwise priced at their best value within that society, they can take those resources at a cost and produce a product that is worth this much to others within society, that they are creating this much value for society. The price just determines how much goes as profit to the business versus value to the customer. You saw this yesterday with the fish game. The buyers had a certain amount of value. The sellers were also creating their profit as well. And so in a capitalist society, the reason that it works, the reason that there's prosperity is because there is sufficient incentive to reward a business that can gather the right kind of resources at a low cost, sell it at a price to people who are willing, because it's worth it, to buy that. So society is benefiting by this much every time that business is engaged in producing its product. That is why a capitalist society becomes prosperous. The more and more people you have, the more and more people that are going to be involved in combining resources to make high-valued products. That was part of what the speaker yesterday during lunch was talking about. More and more people is really a good thing. More and more resources that can therefore be combined to make products. Any questions on that? Because that is a very, very important concept to my talk here. Okay, everybody all right? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about what a business person has to do. So to execute the idea and be competitive, business owners and managers have to make a lot of decisions. These are just the primary ones. They have to decide what product they're going to make, who's the target customer, what market are they going to reach that customer in, what's their price going to be, how, where, and when are they going to produce it, what kind to produce. Again, that gets to that quality. How many to produce, how to sell it, where, when to sell, how to distribute. All of those are decisions that every business person has to make. Any one of these could lead to a failure to be able to sell their product at a price that they desired in order to make a profit. As a result of their decisions, owners receive all profits and are responsible for losses. In a capitalist country, the owners are private citizens or groups of private citizens that are called a business or a corporation and that functions to combine resources to make a product. In a socialist country, the owners are going to be the government. And the government either owns the business outright or via lots and lots of regulations tells that business how to operate in order to best serve society. And that is the basis in the socialist countries for businesses. And so therefore the profits are not accruing to the people who are making the decisions. It's going to go to the general government pot and then split elsewhere. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happens to a business when the incentive to make good profits doesn't go to the owners. All right, so some people believe that business profits are unethical. If you're reading the news, you can listen to Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, many of the others that are on the left will say that they don't think it's right that businesses should be owners or businesses themselves should be worth millions or perhaps even billions of dollars. And so I'll ask a question to you all. Is it ethical for a company to seek to increase profits? Is it greedy? If it does, can profits be too high? So what do you think? And whether you believe it or not, what have you heard? And let's talk a minute about that. So is it ethical for a company to seek to increase its profits? Or is it just being greedy? Yes?
Yes, it is ethical.
Okay. Why do you think?
Because that's its purpose. I mean, the purpose of the business is to succeed.
Okay.
And grow eventually. And it can't grow if it doesn't increase its profits. It's not, I don't think it's greedy, but profits can be too high if you're just, well, it depends on how you make a profit.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, can people hear what she's saying? No. Okay, so she's saying that in essence, that yes, it's good for business to create a profit, to be profitable, because that's how they can continue to exist. And you were starting to say something about greed.
If it is going about increasing its profits in a well-rounded and honest way, then it's not greed.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up. Let me state right now that in all the discussions for today, I want to stipulate that what the business is doing is it's operating in a legal manner. It's selling a legal product. It's doing so without fraud, and there's no stealing involved. So everything is above board. If any of those other things are occurring, then that should be prosecuted, and that is not part of a capitalist society. So capitalism is dependent upon a government that's going to enforce property rights and contract rights. And it goes without saying the life and liberty as well, but primarily property rights are very, very important. So we've got, in a capitalist society, in order for it to function, we've got to have a government that is enforcing property rights. So we're going to set aside those issues right now. We're going to focus on the fact that we're selling a legal product. There's no fraud involved, and there's no coercion. Everybody is free to do as they wish. Yes.
With capitalism in a free market, if a company gets too greedy and does try to increase profits to an amount that is absurd, the market will push it back down because people will not want to buy it. They will realize this is absurd, I'm not buying this, and the market will push them back because that's just how it balances out.
Okay, so I would agree with that. I'm not sure I would ever use the word greed. I would say that if a company is trying to increase profits, that fine, go ahead. If it wants to try to price its product higher because of whatever reason, and it wants to promote that, and say it's got a better, higher quality, or for whatever reason, then fine, let them go ahead. As long as the customers have the choice of going elsewhere, then fine, they can give it a go. And you're exactly right. If a company does overprice its product relative to quality, relative to its competition, then it's going to lose it's going to lose certainly some customers. They're going to go elsewhere, and then the company has to decide, all right, doesn't want to operate under that condition. Somebody had a comment back in here at all? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say that in capitalist
more than like in a socialist economy that would be receiving welfare and things, because it allows them to be able to have a job and to work and become more. And chances are, if profits are increasing overall for the entire company, that profits for all the employees will probably increase too. So you ultimately help more people.
Okay, could you hear that? I think the essence of it would be that when a business is profitable, then it can expand and thereby hire more employees, have more work for them to do, and then there'll be more for others within the society. And I'm actually going to have an entire slide on that, so that's exactly right.
Okay,
And
one more thing.
yes.
So, I watched the same one, and it said that the founders of Ben and Jerry's ice cream company,
Mhm.
Ben and Jerry,
Right.
They made this rule that no CEO of the company would ever make more than some set amount.
Sure.
And what actually ended up happening was the next CEO, after those two retired, he actually ended up being paid like double what they'd been paid, double the set amount that they had,
Mhm.
because the incentive just wasn't enough. So when
The incentive for what wasn't enough?
The incentive to do the work, the incentive to keep up the good products, the incentive to provide for the demand of the market.
Okay, could you all hear that? So she was saying that Ben and Jerry's had set it as a policy that they were not going to pay the CEO more than a certain multiple times their average worker. And so it made it for relatively low CEO pay. After they retired, I'm going to suggest that they probably had some trouble trying to attract somebody else willing to come in and work for that low level, because if someone is at that level of capability and expertise within the business world, there are businesses that are going to be willing to pay them a lot of money. Why is that? Because someone who is at that level has probably demonstrated their ability to make correct decisions for a business that influence the activities of hundreds or thousands of people. So if one person is influencing the activities of hundreds or thousands of people in order to do better things, create more products, sell more products, make more profits, that person is worth a lot of money to the company. And that's why a CEO can be worth hundreds or maybe even thousands of times more than the average worker, because the decisions that they're making, the influence that they're having on the company activities are so much greater that they're actually creating value for that company. And I would also add, though, even if they weren't, it's up to the company to make that, or the owners to make that decision. If they bring somebody in and they wildly overpay that person for relative to the good decisions that they're making, well, then that company is going to suffer losses because they're paying too much for whatever they're getting. So in that case, again, once again, allow the capitalist market, allow the businesses to make those decisions on what they want to pay somebody, and therefore they will either suffer the consequences or reap the gains. And that's the way that it works. So I'm going to build on what you said in a slide here, and we're going to talk about uses for profits. Is it ethical if some companies are more profitable than others? Should the most profitable give their excess profits to the less profitable so that results would be equal? Well, does anybody on this side, because I've spent a lot of time here, does anybody over here want to respond to that? Should the most profitable companies give their excess profits to the less profitable so that the results are more equal and everything is fair? Yes.
No.
Why not?
It's their fair making. If a company wants to make more money, they should try harder, or maybe if they're already trying really hard and they just can't, maybe they need to increase the profit.
Yes, because clearly their idea is not good enough. They're consuming resources that are worth more than the price of what they're paying, so it's not worthwhile. Yes?
Well, I was just going to say that just because you give a company money doesn't mean they know exactly what to do with it. If they're failing, it's because there's something inside isn't working, not because they don't have enough money to move it.
And that's another one of the beauties of capitalism, is that companies that are successful will naturally have more money, they'll have more profits, they'll have more money, and so that those people can then invest that in ways that will create more success. On the other hand, if you have a business that is not doing well, they're losing money, what does that mean? That tells you that their cost to make their product is higher than the price that society is willing to pay for it. So they are actually consuming resources in society and to the detriment of everybody overall. And so what happens to them? They have less profits, which means they have less money, which means they need to change something, as you suggest, or go out of business and do something completely different. Yes, one more.
Oh, but if you're doing, and I see the little air quotes around that,
Yeah.
excess profits, because
Right.
in a business there is no such thing as excess profits.
And that's why I quoted it, yeah.
Because the excess
Mhm.
is what goes to building on your company. If for say a company wants to donate to another company that they think is going under, that's on them. But it is a step to socialism where the government comes and says, okay, well now you have to do this. We've seen you doing it, and now you have to.
Yes, so the essence here is, should the most profitable give excess profits to less profit? Actually, a little bit of a trick question. The key thing here is, who makes the decision? Does the government make the decision, or does the business that's profitable make the decision? Yes?
And I think that if the government makes that decision to take money from a successful company and give it to the unsuccessful company, it's more incentive for the successful company to slow down their work because they're like, it doesn't even matter. If
Why
they
about-
make extra, it
why-
just gets taken away.
Okay.
And it creates incentive for the lower company to be like, I don't even have to try. I'm getting money anyway.
And you're about 3 slides ahead of me, so very good. We're going to come to that. I'm going to call that socialized business. So one more comment, then we're going to go on.
So with that said,
Yep.
there really is no such thing as successful business.
Mhm.
Every single profit they made is because of something they made or bought to begin with
Yep.
to resell. So everything they have is from something they already have.
Exactly right. In other words, they only could make that profit if a customer has already decided that what they're making is worth it to them, higher than the price, and of course the price is higher than the cost. So that's exactly right. A business only has billions of dollars if there are thousands or millions of people who are very satisfied to buy the product from them. So when anybody in politics complains about a company that's worth billions of dollars, again, assuming no fraud, nothing illegal, and no coercion, if a business has made $1 billion selling products, wow, that's a great thing. Okay, so let's keep going. So what are profits used for, to build on some comments here? There are 5 primary uses that a business has for its profits. The first one, compensate owners for taking a risk. Every business is a risk because there's no guarantee that customers are going to be willing to buy your product at a price that's greater than the cost to produce. So compensate owners for taking a risk. The second one, bonus payments to employees. Profits occur after all expenses have been paid. Part of those expenses are the wages to the employees. So the employees have already been paid their wages. What we're talking about here is money that is paid over and above those wages to employees. And why would a business want to do that? Why would a business want to give more money to employees than what they've already promised to do so? Yes?
Because then the employees will stay with them.
Exactly right. So the employees will stay with them because in a free market capitalist society, every employee has the ability to choose who they want to work for. The employee provides their time, their experience, and their skills to whatever business that they're working for. The business pays them money. If an employee is worth so much, that more than what a business is paying them, well, then they are perfectly free to go elsewhere and go work for them. So what does a bonus payment do? Exactly right. It gives extra money to the employee to say, hey, we did a great thing last year. We made lots of great products. Customers bought them. We made profits. And the business owners decide that they're going to share those profits with the employees. Now, on the socialist side, just a quick aside here, on the socialist side, the socialists will say that the only reason that a business makes a profit is because the employees were underpaid. That is what they'll say. They will say the workers were exploited. That's the key word that you hear a lot. Workers are exploited. That's why a business made all kinds of money. And in particular, if a business makes $1 billion, that means there must have been thousands or maybe millions of employees that were exploited and enabled that business to make that money. And I would suggest that no, the reason that business made a profit is a combination of a number of things, including the owners being willing to take a risk. And so if we simply say, like the socialists will argue, all profits should belong to the employees, what's going to happen then, in effect, the bonus payments go to the employees, and there's nothing left over to do these other things. And so we're going to talk about that now. Invest is the third thing that a business can do with its profits. Why does a company invest? In order to grow business capacity, which I believe is what you were saying. And of course, that's a good thing, too. Remember in the lemonade game, I said, what does a business do when they've got a product that's worth a lot? There's 2 things that a business does. 1, they raise the price, and 2, they produce more, right? Produce more. That's what this is right here. How does a business produce more? It builds a bigger factory. It buys some more trucks. It builds some more machines. It hires some more people. These are all things that are part of the investment in growing business capacity. And then the fourth thing, invest in research and development. This is where new products come from. The profits that a business has are invested in research and then developing new products to try to increase their sales to other customers, to improve their profitability. Another thing that they can do is they can invest in new production methods, new ways to make products at a lower cost. The most famous production method of all, of course, would be the assembly line. It was actually created by a guy by the name of Oldsmobile, created the first one, but he didn't really perfect it. Henry Ford perfected it, and turned Ford Motor Company into one of the most successful businesses in the world by the 1920s. So assembly line is an example of a business that invested in production methods in order to lower their costs. And of course, then the fifth one is save for future investments or economic downturn. So basically, the fifth one is just says we're going to do one of the first four at some point in the future. Yes?
I think goes to six.
Okay.
Another form of invest. The company I work for, one of their values is charity.
Okay.
And so we invest to give back.
Mhm.
What they like to do is, like this summer, they are flying World War II veterans who can't get to their memorial in D.C. They're flying them there. They're investing in their company in the form of goodwill and public appearance and things like that. But the form of it is kind of giving back to the community.
Yeah, so actually that is a good point. I don't really like the term giving back because in my view, anytime a company has made a profit, they've already done a great thing. They've sold a product that people valued greater than the price. But certainly charitable giving is something that any business can do. And or maybe I'll add that as a sixth one up there. So yeah, that's a good thought. Certainly that is another category of what a business does. Why does a business do it? It is primarily to promote goodwill and you could consider perhaps a form of advertising in order to promote their name out there. So okay. Anyway, those are the uses for profits. Who benefits from higher business profits? This is what I'll call the stakeholders, people who are impacted by what a business does, is called a stakeholder. So owners obviously benefit in the first one. The employees, of course, benefit in the bonus payments. When a business grows its capacity, employees benefit because there's more work for them to do. Suppliers benefit because the company, if I'm selling more product, well then I've got to buy more from my suppliers in order to make my product. So suppliers do better. And then the community as well, because there's more taxes that are being paid and there's more people that are working, so the community benefits. In the fourth one, customers benefit because there's new products and the products that are being offered are being so at a lower price. And so if you take away, notice if you take away profits because you either tax them away in a socialist economy or you require them to be given to employees, which again is another socialist intent, you don't get the other three things. You don't get owners willing to expand, you don't get expansion, and you don't get new products. That's another reason why a socialist economy stagnates. It does not grow. There are no new things. It just stays the same. And in fact, that's the best case. And typically, what always will happen is they'll decline over time for a number of reasons. Okay, so what behaviors does the potential for profit encourage? Profits provide the incentive to maximize sales revenue by meeting customer needs and minimizing costs via efficiencies to reduce price, because that, of course, is how a business makes more profits. No profits means no incentive to meet customer needs or lower prices. Exactly what you were saying. If you take the profits away, then they're not going to try as hard to do to make those profits in the first place. Yes.
So I was in Ukraine,
Okay. UK. All right.
in '93.
Yes.
And I saw this. They were socialist businesses, and you would go to a grocery store, and there was almost nothing on the shelf.
Right.
And really, there was almost nobody there to serve you because they were going to get paid one way or the other. The business was going to stay open one way or the other. There was no incentive. In fact, there was a counter incentive because if you worked hard, you made your manager look bad. And he didn't want to look bad because he was comfortable in his position. And so you would end up getting penalized for hard work.
So we're going to come to this in a few minutes. The lack of incentive in a socialized economy is what drives them down. The existence of an incentive is what drives a capitalist company, a capitalist economy forward and upward. Okay, so now we're going to talk about socialized athletics. So raise your hand if you play a sport. I expect almost every hand to be up. Okay, I'm going to just ask you, what's your sport? Yes? Jiu-jitsu and karate. Okay, and why do you play it? Because it's fun. Okay, do you ever go against somebody else? Okay, and so do you want to win? Well, sometimes you do win, but do you want to win? Yes, why do you want to win? Generally, most people say because it's fun, and I like it. Okay. What's your sport? Oh, another karate. Okay. Does any of you do something other than karate? Volleyball. Okay. Who said volleyball? Oh, you do that too. Okay. All right. And so why do you play? Because it's fun. Okay. And do you play to win?
Yes.
Why? Okay. And do you practice? And why do you practice? To get better. Why do you have to get better? Because if you don't practice, what happens? You lose. Okay. And how about you? What's your sport? Softball. Okay. And why do you play? Fun. Okay. And do you play to win?
Yeah.
Why?
Because
Because you want to win. Some people will say losing isn't fun. Could be. Yeah. And so do you practice?
Yeah.
Why? Okay. So lots of fun going on. Somebody else over here. Okay. All right. What's your sport?
Alpine skiing.
Alpine skiing. Okay. And why do you do it?
So I can be in better shape.
Okay. So it helps you physically then. All right. Is there any kind of competition involved?
Yeah, we do racing.
Okay. So you could race against others, or you could actually race against yourself then, right? Do you want to? Was it skiing? Do you want to ski quickly?
Depends.
Okay. Why?
Well, because in some cases, if you're doing if you're doing tricks and you're getting points for that, if
Right.
you go too fast, you could break something.
Aha. Okay. So there's a bit of risk involved in that as well. Yeah, a lot of risk. Anybody here play a team sport? Yeah. What's your sport? Okay. What's your sport?
soccer.
Soccer. Let's talk about soccer. So why do you play?
Because it's fun and I'm interested in it.
Fun and interested in it. And some people on a team sport would say, I like doing things with other people then. Okay. Do you play to win? Sometimes you win or sometimes you play to win?
Well, I'm not on a team yet.
Okay. But
I am on it.
But you would like to be then? Okay, all right, so I could probably interview everybody here, and we come to the same conclusion that generally people play athletic sports because they, first of all, they like being active, they think it's fun, they generally want to do better. If it's competitive, most things are, either against others or against yourself, then you're going to practice in order to get better. So basically, maybe you want to be like these guys here. But let's suppose we change things a little bit. Let's suppose your sport's basketball, and you're playing me. And so we're playing, and if I score a basket, let's say it's worth 2 points, I get 2 points for that, you get nothing. And some people would say, oh, that's just so unfair. I'm getting everything, they are getting nothing. We need to socialize this. So we're going to change the rules. We're going to say that if I make a basket, I get 1 point, and you get 1 point. And not only that, if you score a basket, you get a point, but I get a point too. So that way, everything is even, and at the end, everybody gets a trophy, and we all go home very, very happy. So my question would be, for anybody here, just raise your hand. Would that, if basketball was your sport, let's suppose it was, if basketball was your sport, would that change your willingness to play the sport? And well, maybe not. We'll have to see about that. But would that affect your willingness to play the sport? Yeah, most people would say yes. And I would ask why, and they would say, because what's the point? And then I would say, okay, so everybody told me that you want to practice in order to get good, to beat the competition. Would you still want to practice, and would you actually still practice an hour and a half a day if that was a varsity sport for some reason? No, you would not, because again, what's the point? So look what's happened here. We took an activity and we said, all right, we're going to socialize it. We're going to make everything equal, everything fair. And at this point, there's no incentive to play good offense because you're going to just give half the points away. And notice also, there's no incentive to play good defense either because you're going to get half the points anyway, right? So there's no incentive to play good offense or good defense. There's no incentive to practice, and there's no incentive to be good at anything at all. That's what happens when you introduce socialism and you even things out like that. Okay. Comment? Yes.
But with the socialized athletics, it's even less fair.
Okay.
Because, like, when you do something that you worked hard to do, and they're like, okay, you got that, but now someone else gets it too.
Right.
Because everybody's a winner in political correctness.
And their feeling is, for most socialists, is that they do not like the idea that some people have way more than others. And so their solution is, we're going to even things out. And as you've heard from other speakers, it's all about equalizing results. Okay, so that goes away. Another one, socialized test taking. Suppose I said to you, okay, we're going to be, I don't know how you do it in homeschooling, but let's suppose you're in a envision a public school, and we've got a classroom here, and I'm a teacher, and I'm saying, okay, things are going to be different now. We're going to socialize test taking. Instead of when you take a test, you get a 90, you earn a 90, you get a 90, or you earn a 50, you get a 50. We're just going to even everything out. All the points are going to go into a pot. Everybody's going to get the same number, so that, let's say the class average, if it's a 70, that means everybody gets a 70, even if your score was a 90 or your score was a 50. Now, a lot of the A students would say, hey, wait a minute, excuse me, I don't want to be in this class anymore. I want to leave. Nope, not the choice. Under socialism, you do not get to leave. That is not a choice. You have to stay as part of the socialist society. So you have to stay. What do you think the A students are going to do? Are they going to study as much? Are they going to sacrifice? Are they going to not play with friends at night or watch TV or do whatever else they might want to do? I would suggest no, they're not. Now, A students generally going to be pretty conscientious people. They're probably going to say, you know what, I'd like to learn something, so maybe I'll open the book a little bit and maybe I'll get a 75 or something. But the A students definitely are down. Now, what about the F students? They would have gotten a 50, and they're saying, hey, this is a great world. I don't have to study at all. And those A students, they're going to give me 25 points. Shoot, I'm not going to do anything. Maybe I'll listen in class a little bit and I'll get a 25 on the test. But no, so see what happens over time. The second test, what happens? No more 90s, the 50s are 20, the average is a 60. Test after test after test, scores are going lower and lower and lower. And notice what happens as well. What are the A students are going to say, hey, come on, F students, I'm willing to work hard here. You guys aren't doing anything at all. I'm contributing an 80, I'm getting a 55. This isn't right. The F students, though, look what they do. They're saying, you know what? You A students, that is so easy for you. I know that it just comes naturally. You don't have to work hard. I need you to keep making those 80s and 90s because, frankly, it's hard for me. I really don't like to study. And, I can't handle just getting a 25 or a 30. You need to keep contributing that 90 and that 85. And so you get everybody going against each other, and the whole society breaks down. And that is exactly what happens in society. Is anybody here reading on Venezuela? The richest country in all of South America 20 years ago. They elected a socialist president who said, I'm going to introduce socialist policies. I'm going to overtake the oil industry, the banking industry, the agriculture industry. I'm going to give free food to people. I'm going to give low gas prices, this and that. And it has gone from the most wealthiest country in all of South America to the absolute poorest. They cannot feed their people. The average person has lost over 15 pounds in the last year simply due to malnutrition. There's nothing available at the stores. Inflation is 1,000% or more every month. So it is a society that has been ripped to shreds. Comment? Yeah, okay. All right, so, and then school group projects already socialized. For those of you perhaps are involved in school projects, there might be, say, 5 people in a group. 2 or 3 are going to work very hard. 1 probably not, yet you're all going to get the same grade. Very, very frustrating. So anyway, those are already socialized. So the bottom line, socialism eliminates the individual motivation to excel, encourages mediocrity, greatly reduces the penalty for poor performance, for all the reasons that we just talked about. Okay, so human nature, excellence, and ethics. Is it ethical for an athlete to practice and play harder to win?
Yes.
Or is he just greedy? I would say it's ethical. It's what all of you have been telling me for the last 15 minutes. Is it ethical for a musician to practice and play better for more applause, awards, and ticket sales, or are they just being greedy? So a little rhetorical. Is it ethical for a student to study harder, to get higher grades and possibly a better job, or are they just being greedy and they should not? Is it ethical for someone to ask for a higher salary or to pay a lower price because someone else is not going to get the exact same deal? And lastly, interesting, is it ethical for someone to think about and do just the right things to attract the love of his or her life? Because that great person is no longer going to be available for anybody else because they are now with you. Something to think about. So I would argue that achieving excellence is part of human nature in every aspect of human nature, whether it's athletics, whether it is music, whether it's academics, whether it's finance, or even romance. I would suggest that achieving excellence is part of human nature. When activities are socialized, human nature is denied. Results are poor due to lack of competition and reward recognition, as you all have been saying and experiencing here in the last 20 minutes. Okay, I would now suggest to you business is human nature. Profits for a business are like scoring points for an athlete, applause awards, ticket sales for a musician, test points for a student. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Why is profits for a business like scoring points for an athlete? Why is that? What do you think that might be? Yes?
Because when profits the business makes, I think that means people are pleased with that.
Mm-hmm.
The more points the athlete gets, people are pleased with that. So it's basically like you're getting paid more, they're getting more.
Okay? Or we could say perhaps because it measures performance quality. Right? The more profits a business had, the more customers must have been satisfied. The more points an athlete scores, the better they must be. Investing for a business is like practicing for an athlete, a gamer, or a musician, or studying for a student. Why is that? Because investing is how a business improves performance. Right? We invest for new products to lower costs, to expand capacity. Investing improves performance. So, is it ethical for a company to increase profit? I would say yes, it is. Just because it's same reasoning that it's ethical for an athlete to want to score more points. Is the business greedy if it does? I would say no, it is trying to win, just like all of you in any athletic event, whether it's a team or individual sport. Okay, so my summary here of capitalism versus socialism. Because of competition and the profit incentive, capitalism rewards business people with good ideas who best meet customer quality and price needs. Can profits be too high? I would say no. High profits provide incentive via competition to offer a higher quality product or a lower price to attract business. Socializing business by limiting, reducing, or redistributing profits, which is all of what happens under socialism, reduces the ability and incentive to improve, resulting in lower quality products, less consumer choice, higher prices, and a poor economy. Just for reference, anybody have an idea, what does the average U.S. business make? How much profit after tax per $100 of sales? How many people would say that the average business makes at least $40 profit for every $100 of sales? Yeah, maybe. Okay. How many would say maybe it's only 30? Okay, a few more hands. All right. How many would say 20? $20 of profit for $100 in sales. Okay, I'm already below what most surveys of Americans say. How many say $15 profit for every $100 in sales? You there yet? 10? Everybody say 10. Okay. 5. Maybe 5. 2? Okay, the answer is, yeah, there's a range. That's why I said average. 8. $8 of profit for every $100 of sales. Profit is a much smaller amount of what you're paying at the retail level than most people say. Average surveys, $36 profit. And in fact, it's nowhere near that. The most profitable companies are generally in the 20s. The least profitable companies are around, well, of course, if they're losing money, well, then it's less than 0. But if they're still profitable, 1 or 2. Grocery stores are in the $2 to $3 range. Walmart is around $1.50 to $2. Now, they make billions of dollars of profit because they satisfy millions and millions of people across the world. But that's a number that most people are generally surprised over. Because a primary principle is equality of results, socialism eliminates the individual motivation to excel, encourages mediocrity, and greatly reduces the penalty for poor performance, as we've talked about for the last few minutes. Any questions on all that? I'm going to change the subject here. Okay. So another way to visualize this. Socialists ensure an equal distribution of the economy pie after saving, of course, a large slice for themselves. Invariably, this happens. The leadership of a socialist country always do far better than the ordinary person. But in their zeal to ensure equal distribution of the economy pie, they forget about making the pie in the first place. And so therefore, we end up with this. For capitalism, we embrace unequal results because that means more pie for everyone, and you end up with this. So you notice here that red and orange have a greater share of the overall pie, but the pie is so much larger and everybody is benefiting so much that even purple and blue have more than they would have. It's a much smaller fraction, but it's a much, much bigger pie. And actually the pie is larger than what this pie chart shows here. North Korea has been communist since the 1950s. South Korea, of course, has not. They have roughly, South Korea has twice as many people as North Korea. The South Korean economy produces more wealth in the first 4 days of January than the North Korean economy does for the entire year. The South Korean economy is 100 times larger than the North Korean economy. They have twice as many people. So that means each person has 50 times the wealth in South Korea as in North Korea. That is the effect of communism over the last 2 generations. And it's far greater discrepancy, differential than this illustrates. Anyway, hope you get the point. Okay, so challenge for you all, if you like. If you're willing to email me your toughest talking points, anything you hear that's anti-capitalist or pro-socialist, feel free to send it to my email there. I'd be very happy to give you a response to that and be in the form of some bullet point thoughts. It will not be 3 books to read and you know, write me an essay to prove that you know what I'm talking about. No, it'll be some bullet points. So, and if you want, see me afterwards, and I'll give you my my business card as well. But anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, whatever you hear, send it to me. I'll give you some thoughts, you know, in case you're thinking, hey, you know, I'm not quite sure where they're coming from, but this doesn't sound right at all. Chances are, it isn't right. Okay, so minimum wage. We'll getting a little bit late on time here, but let me just take you through this and just get some quick. We're okay? Okay, all right. Minimum wage. The Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, was passed in the mid-1930s during the depths of the Depression. And it determines the minimum wage for employees in private and public sectors in both federal and state governments. This is routinely amended over time. They've raised the minimum wage. It used to be less than 25 cents. It's now somewhat higher. Under the FLSA, non-exempt hourly employees must be paid the minimum wage or higher. So the current minimum wage rates at the federal level, $7.25. It actually hasn't been raised in about 10 years. Lots of talk about it, but it actually hasn't been. Here in Idaho, it's also $7.25. In some other parts of the country, it's actually higher. Illinois, where I'm from, it's $8.25, although Chicago has recently passed legislation to raise it up over the next 5 years or so to $15. So that brings this question up. Some people believe it's unethical for a business to pay only $8 or $9 per hour to some employees. They believe $15 per hour is appropriate. And so you see things like this. And you're probably aware that in Seattle, this actually passed. $15 an hour is the minimum wage for the city of Seattle. There's a number of people that they call themselves the Fight for 15. They're trying to require McDonald's to pay $15 an hour. And McDonald's actually recently announced that they're no longer going to pay money to fight that initiative. Do you know what they've done instead? Robots. They've eliminated thousands of jobs across the country and replaced them with robots, kiosks, and so on. But nonetheless, so the question is, should the federal minimum wage be raised to $15? So what I'd like to do is get some pro comments first. Whether you believe it or you've just heard it, some pro comments on should the federal minimum wage be raised to $15. We'll do pro first, I'll show you a slide here, some things that I've gathered over the months, and then we'll talk about cons. So for right now, pro. Any thoughts that either that you've heard or that you believe, should we increase the federal minimum wage to $15? Yes. Try to speak up, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to repeat everything.
It's hard to live off of $7.25.
Okay, so that's often the claim. It's difficult to live off of $7.25 an hour. Yes.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, because
Okay.
of inflation,
Okay.
$7.25 doesn't buy quite as much as it did in 2009 when it was initially passed.
And that's exactly right. It hasn't changed at the federal level in 10 years. So therefore, according to the proponents, it definitely needs to go up. Yes. Another pro.
As someone who's been paid $7.25.
Louder, so everybody can hear.
It was the place where I worked. You had no chance for advancement. You couldn't accept tips.
Okay.
So there was no $7.25 an hour is no incentive.
So that's a bit of a con. It was a good thought, but so pro would be that you need to be paid more, and these restrictions should be removed as well. I think is what you're saying. You should have the ability to rise up, even though you're being paid more than you would have otherwise. Okay. All right. Anything on this side of the room? Any other pros?
15 hours.
$15.
$15 an hour.
Right.
Is really good for people who need cheap work.
Okay, so especially for somebody who has low skills, time, and experience, getting paid $15 an hour, that sounds like that's a really great thing. So why don't we make it 25 or 50? That'd be really awesome. Everybody gets paid $50 an hour. Okay, so any more pros? So here's my, oops. Give me a second here. Okay, pro. Here we go. This is a list that I've gathered over the last 6 or 12 months. First of all, people deserve a living wage to support themselves. Workers with a family to support cannot do so at the current minimum wage. Increasing the minimum wage is fair, the right thing to do. Paying workers more means those workers will have more to spend. They'll help the economy. Businesses are being subsidized by government paying welfare benefits to minimum wage employees. So that's not right. The business is paying them so low that they have to go on welfare, so therefore the business should make that up to the government for having to pay these people extra on welfare. Poor people don't have resources to a college degree, and people cannot bargain with big corporations and therefore are exploited. So that would be, I would suggest, a pretty comprehensive list of what people say. So to refute those, we'll talk about the cons in a minute, but a couple of things right now. Workers with a family to support cannot do so at the current minimum wage. Actually, that's probably true. However, is that a reason to raise the minimum wage, or is that a reason to do something else to help those people? The other thing is that only 25% of minimum wage workers actually have a family. 75% of workers do not. And so why should we increase the rate for everybody and subject everybody to these cons that are going to come up here when there's other ways that we can help people if that's deemed that's something you want to do, perhaps at the state or local level, not by a federal regulation. Paying workers more means those workers will have more to spend and help the economy. This is a very simple argument. This is the concept that some people mentioned earlier about the seen and the unseen aspects of the economy. The seen aspects are if you pay workers more, then they're going to have more money to spend. And yes, that is true, as long as they keep their job. That's an issue. However, who has less money to spend if the workers are getting paid more? The business themselves. So do the businesses keep being able to spend even though the workers are getting more? No. So for every extra dollar that the workers are getting, the businesses have less. So the workers might be spending more, but what you don't see is the business are spending less. That is the unseen aspects of economics, a very, very important point. And of course, those who are in favor of the minimum wage, they're not going to mention that other half of it, but it's there nonetheless. Yes?
The other possibility for those low 1-2% profits,
Yeah.
they have to raise the price, and now those people can't buy as much as they could before.
Exactly right. So that's a good con, and I think I've got that one. So yes, great point. All right, let's move on. On the con side, the most important concept, when someone is paid more than their value, something or someone else must make up the difference. If someone, because of their skills and their experience, is only worth $7 an hour, if they get paid $15, someone is losing $8 an hour. Now, to people on the left, if it's the business losing $8 an hour, they generally don't care. Because in their view, the business has so much money that losing the $8 an hour is no big deal, and there will be nothing that happens as a result. Well, as you all know from the slide we talked about before, there's 5 uses for profits. If more of them are going to the employee, that means there's less going into those other 3 things. And so the business is going to do something different. First of all, minimum wage employees are given less hours to work. Some are fired or they're replaced by machines. We know that's happening. I just gave the McDonald's example. This eliminates first jobs for teenagers, and that means that you don't learn the basic skills that you need in order to get the second job. So this is a really important thing for you guys right here, is if you are essentially federally mandated to not have a job, that's not a good thing. Minimum wage employees must work harder, faster, or smarter, which is, of course, the most difficult for the least experienced workers. Other employees must work harder, faster, or smarter to make up for it. And what about the person who's been at the company for 5 years? They've worked their way up from $7 an hour, and maybe now they're making $16. Somebody else is coming in, they know nothing. They're making $15 an hour, and they're dependent on this experienced employee to help them out. How fair is it to that? Now, the unions would reply, oh, well, that just means you need to pay the $16 person 25 or 30. And that's why the unions are interested in this, by the way. They're not really so concerned about the minimum wage. They just want to see it raised up because then they think it'll make it easier for them to bargain to raise their wages up even higher. So that's their interest in this. So we talked about number 4. Number 5, raise prices to customers. That's the other another response that a business can take. If they're overpaying some of their employees, they're going to raise prices to customers. We've seen this a number of times. People have written editorials. They're restaurant owners. They have a very low profit margin. Labor is a big cost to them. If they're forced to pay more for their labor, they've got to either raise prices, and in which case a lot of their customers are going to just stay home, which means they've lost that customer and they've lost their business. And some other things you can see there, reduced benefits. Maybe the business isn't going to pay for education anymore. So one way or the other, something is going to have to make up for that $8. A few other points here. Paying employees a minimum cash amount prevents someone from choosing to work at a lower wage and just say, hey, pay me $5 an hour, Mr. Boss, but teach me what I need to know. Teach me how to be a great employee, so in a year I'm going to be worth $10 to you. Well, they can't do that anymore because they got to pay them $15. They can't afford to spend the time. Proponents will claim that they've got research that shows nothing bad happens with the minimum wage, but it's very difficult to try to measure what actually happens. Same comment here about 15. Well, why not 25, 50, or 100? Only a fraction of minimum wage owners or workers are supporting a family. And lastly, whatever the legislated minimum wage, the true minimum wage is always zero. Why? Because an employer could always decline to hire someone at all. And that is the unseen economic aspect. We don't know how many people would have been hired who are no longer going to be because somebody else is being paid twice what they are worth. I think you had a hand.
Yeah, so there's one more that I experienced with you.
Okay.
We can't hear you very well.
Talk loud. Thank you.
Sorry, I got a cold last night. Utah decided to play catch up in the minimum wage when I was a teenager. I worked at Pizza Hut, started at $4.25. I worked hard, I got a nickel an hour raise.
Okay.
Worked hard again, got a nickel an hour raise. I'm now making $4.35. Utah brought the minimum wage up to $4.40. My next pay raise was back to minimum wage. I worked hard, I got 5 cents more. I worked hard, got 5 cents more. Utah raised the minimum wage again. My next raise was back to minimum wage. I got 4 raises over 4 years. At the end of it, I was back at minimum wage.
Yeah. So yeah, again, they didn't. I would suggest that they didn't really do anything for you, and I was waiting for you to say at some point they cut your hours and let you go because we can't afford. Pizza Hut is not going to be a high profit.
My dad had a pizza place, and he had to cut.
Yeah, right. It's going to happen. Is there yes, hand.
Another thing is a lot of kids my age don't really care about making more money. They just want to work less.
Work less hours, you mean?
Yeah, work less hours. So
Okay.
if you raise the minimum wage so that they're making more money per hour,
Right.
then they're not necessarily going to work more hours and make more money. They're just going to work fewer hours and get the same amount they were making before.
Right. So some will work fewer hours, and some will work no hours, and that's the problem. How is that fair to those who end up with none versus some who work for few? And if you wanted it, it would be better to allow people to have that choice. Yes.
Well, another big problem with minimum wage increase is that the people who do work really hard and say, you know what, I want to get a raise, I want to go up to management in this company, I want to do good.
Right.
And then they start out at $15 an hour and they're working at the same amount when they're working twice as hard as the person next to them who doesn't care at all, but they're getting the same exact amount of money
Right.
for 2 totally different work ethics and just different amounts of ability to fly.
Exactly right. So there again, you have the fact that in essence you are forcing that business to overpay one person. Somebody else is gonna pay the price for that. So yes.
So work ethic is one aspect of it, but the other aspect is skill.
Sure. Skills and
Yeah,
experience.
Completely unskilled laborers, $15 an hour. How does that make it? And then you have no room to pay the skilled laborers more.
And right, it puts a pinch.
Does that make?
Right, and so if you're forced to overpay someone to 15, that means you're going to have less money to pay that 16, maybe 17 or 18, which they're probably earning because now that person is training the $15 person. Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say that half of the arguments for raising it won't even be solved by raising it because just as you said, the price of products go up because now suddenly it costs more to produce them because labor costs more. So then they can probably buy the same amount of things they bought with $7.25. So it really doesn't fix the problem. And then furthermore, like you said, because it costs people more to have human employees, they might just eliminate employees or replace them with robots. And then people actually end up worse off than they were when they were at least making $7.25.
And that's exactly right. So what it comes down to is in a capitalist economy, we want to give people the choice to do what's best for them, whether you are the employee seeking work, whether you are the employer seeking an employee. Allow people to reach the best agreement that works for them. If it's a combination of just wages, or if it's wages plus training, or if it's wages plus some benefits, let people make that choice. Okay, because a business is private property, the business owner has the freedom and responsibility to make the best decision. It's impossible for a politician to be able to make those. And of course, a minimum wage at the federal level means it's going to be the same whether you're talking Idaho, Los Angeles, New York, or San Antonio, Texas. Okay, so one thing, and we'll go to my last thing. Stakeholder definition. A stakeholder is one who's involved in or affected by a course of action. There are 5 stakeholders for every business: owners, customers, employees, suppliers, and the community. So the responsibility to each of those is as follows. To the owner, when people who are managing or running the business, they need to run it in a profitable way, but they also need to obey legal boundaries. We can't have businesses doing things against the law. So the management has responsibility to the owners to do things in that manner. Customers. Deliver the product quality as promised. If you say it's a high quality product, you must deliver a high quality product. If you say it's a low quality product, well, you don't have to deliver a high quality product as long as you deliver the product that you promised. That's what's required. And also, products need to be safe when used according to the directions. If you drink the laundry fluid and you get very, very sick, that's not the business's fault. Okay? It's meant to clean clothes. Employees need to be paid as agreed and safe working conditions. Suppliers, pay the bills on time. If I've sold a product and I bought some resources, I need to pay the people who supplied that to me. And lastly, the community. Obey the law. There's such a thing called an operating permit, and they also need to pay taxes and charitable giving. So I've got probably less than 10 minutes. You're okay? All right. So let me talk about operating permit here for a second. One thing that many people, particularly environmentalists, will say is, first of all, an operating permit, if you're not familiar with it, a big part of my career was working in or for oil refineries. I'm very familiar with operating permits. And what an operating permit is, it's an agreement between a business, let's call it the refinery, and the local or state government on the amount of emissions that refinery can put out into the air, the water, the land, or noise levels. Okay? And you might say, well, gee, why isn't it just 0? Why should there be any allowed? So let me ask you that question. Why do you think? Why would the local and the state governments allow businesses to have any emissions at all, let's say, into the air, into the water, into the land? And I will tell you that it is not 0. It is a number. And if I, as a refinery operator, go above that number, I am called in front of people to have to explain it, and I had to do that once, and it's not fun at all. So why is it not 0? Why is there something that's always allowed, a certain amount? Agreed. Somebody said something here. Yes?
Because there will be no production, because you can't make the stuff without having the consequences.
And that's exactly right. What he said was, if you allow 0 emissions, then you will have 0 production. Why is that? It's the law of physics and it's the law of chemistry. Whenever you combine certain resources together in any kind of a reaction, you will not get 100% of the one thing that you're looking for. You're going to get a range of things. Now, of course, scientists and engineers would try to maximize the things that are valuable and minimize the things that don't have value or maybe actually are harmful. But nonetheless, that's the way it is. You cannot go to 0. So if you do legislate 0, well, then all production is going to shut down. You're going to lose all your refineries, all your chemical plants, everything. So there has to be a certain amount allowed. How much is allowed? An amount that is considered to be safe for the people around, but not too high that it creates a problem. And so I'll ask people, does anybody here like strawberries? Generally, most people do. But did you know that if you ate, I don't know how many the number is, 1,000 a day or whatever it is, there's a huge, huge high number that if you ate too many strawberries, there actually are a certain number of carcinogens that are in strawberries, and so then you would get cancer. But can you eat, whatever, thousands of them a day? No. Would you? No. So the point of it is that there are certain limits on things that are in small quantities aren't going to be a problem. In large quantities, they will be. And so the point of the operating permit is to seek a balance between those. Okay, so now, it may not be possible to satisfy every stakeholder every time, and so here we go. My last question for you. This is called You Be the Boss. You are the general manager of 3 hardware stores in cities along the Florida Gulf Coast. There's a Category 3 hurricane, that's 100 miles an hour. I know you guys don't get too many hurricanes up here. So that's 100 miles an hour. So that's pretty, or 100 to 125 miles an hour. That's going to damage some things. And it will make landfall in 5 days. People are boarding up their houses, and your hardware stores are going to run out of plywood. Of course, that's what people use to board up the windows and things. Your usual supplier in Georgia is out. Keep in mind, we're down in Florida now. Your supplier in Georgia is out. Your only option is Oregon, and they need 5 days to get it there unless you pay extra, which would be double, to expedite it for a 2-day delivery. Okay? Some or all of your employees want to stay home to make preparations with their family. You would need to pay them overtime to make arrangements with your Oregon supplier. The state governor's on TV pointing out that businesses must comply with all state emergency pricing laws. No price gouging. Okay? So, Do you simply run out and close your stores? Do you stay open and decide to pay extra for Oregon supply, plus require your employees to work overtime? If you decide to stay open, do you raise prices to cover your increased cost? And of course, then potentially be accused of price gouging and by the Attorney General? Or do you take a loss on each plywood sheet you sell? If you take a substantial loss selling plywood, you likely will not make your profit targets for the year, and you're going to sacrifice a $50,000 bonus. You and your family really need the money. So, thinking about your responsibilities now to every one of your stakeholders. Think about the owners, think about your customers, think about your employees, think about your suppliers, and think about your community. What do you do? And this actually is a real life situation. This is what people have to do. So, all right, what would you do?
Well, the best thing to do would probably be to
Speak loud.
comply with the emergency protocol as far as pricing.
Okay, so be wary of raising your price too much. Okay?
Besides, that wouldn't be ethical to, in an emergency situation like that, to charge people more.
Let's talk about that. Okay, keep going.
We would have to, I mean, it's, like I said, it's an emergency situation.
Right.
People need this plywood.
Right.
So you should get it from wherever you can.
Okay, so you're suggesting bring it down from Oregon, keep the price the same and just take a loss, raise the price some, raise it enough, raise it a lot?
If you could do it without being too harsh, you could raise the price a little.
So raise the price without being harsh. Okay?
I remember a story, I can't remember which state it was, but one state had like a disaster happening and ice was really important to them. And they
Right.
were out of ice. And so another state company brought in ice but charged them $10 a bag.
Right.
And people paid for the bag because
Yep.
they wanted the ice.
Yep.
Right?
They had things that they
Then
wanted to keep
still
cold.
Yeah, so they still have the choice whether to buy. I would raise the prices. I would take Oregon. I would have them work overtime, and I'd work the price because they have other options. They don't have to buy from you, or they can buy from you, or maybe there's other people selling too, right?
Okay.
But you have to raise the price, otherwise it's a loss for your company.
The gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I just want to point out that your example assumes that your expenses are going up for the employee overtime and for the deal with Oregon.
Right.
What I wanted to add was, let's say your expenses did not go up a penny.
Okay.
You have the exact same cost as always, but now there's a shortage of plywood because more people want to need it.
Right.
I would point out that it's still legitimate to raise the price to the market level, even without the additional costs, because what prices do is allocate things in the market situation as it is. If there's a shortage of plywood, that's the reality, and a higher price will cause people to use it more efficiently, and will cause people who have more value to protect to pay the higher price, where people have less value to protect, okay? So, not having plywood on my home, would only cause myself to lose $100, someone else is gonna lose $1,000 because he's got a more valuable home or whatever. You're just simply having things allocated more logically. The price needs to go up to reflect the reality regardless of your cost.
And to build on that, it means that if the price goes up a lot, that people will then make sure they only generally will buy enough just to cover their windows up, for example. And if, as opposed to if someone early on buys a whole ton of it when it's a relatively low price, they might be covering up their front door, their back door, the shed in the back, the dog house, everything else. Whereas they're now precluding the ability for some people to buy and cover up their huge window in the front of their house that's going to cost $2,000 to replace and flood the house out if it does break. So yes, that is actually the market response to raising the price very high. Yes.
So what I do is, if there is a happy medium, I choose the happy medium. But if there is none, I just close the store. I wouldn't put the loss.
Okay, we'll take one more. Yes.
I would just run out and close the store.
Okay.
Because it says it will take 2 days to deliver it, and
Right.
the hurricane's in 2 days.
Well, I think it's 5. 5 days. So 2 days of work.
Okay.
Does that change your response?
It might actually.
Okay. Anyway, all right. One last one, and then we'll wrap up.
Alright, so I'd be pretty harsh. I'd get the wood,
Okay. Bring it down from Oregon.
and then I would definitely raise the price.
Okay. What about
The
your?
only thing that I would change is offer my customers a raise if they stick around. Not too high, not too low.
Okay.
And it would be their choice to go to their families, because I can totally respect that.
Mhm.
And it's their choice completely, and I respect what they choose.
Yeah. So those are good responses. Some other things that you could do, though, and this is typically what's done, is you would communicate with your customers. Let them know what you are trying to do to meet their needs. You're buying from here. You're expediting that. Explain why you're raising the price. Recognize that you could raise it. You could raise it higher, but you're going to keep it right here. You want to ensure supply. Go into some of the issues that we just talked about here, and try to generate as much goodwill as possible, given that this is an emergency situation and it's going to be a problem. So generally, communication is something that's going to work. I used to work for BP for a number of years. We would have this exact situation, except it was with gasoline stations. It was not with plywood, but I just adapted it to something different so it would be less political. But we have this exact situation here, and so one response could be raise gas. If the gas price might have been $3, let's say, if it goes to 6 or 7 or 8, some people would say, "Oh, that's price gouging. That's horrible. That's not." I can't remember your adjective that you had there. That's not. Ethical. No, it wasn't ethical. You had a different word. Okay, but anyway, you raise the prices very, very high. So what does that do? That means, as we just talked about, that people who really need it will be willing to pay the high price. Others will conserve and not buy as much gasoline, because what about the people that need the gasoline to get to the hospital, for example? They go to a service station that's shut down. There's no gas there because somebody else filled up their car and it's now parked in their garage with 20 gallons inside of it. Okay, so high prices have that response to the market. They will reduce demand. It will thereby increase supply. We could go on for quite a while on this one. So to wrap up, everyone has responsibilities, people and business. We talked a little bit about, of course, people are business. Decisions have consequences. You need to consider all the stakeholders, everybody that's going to be impacted by your decision. Identify and recognize opportunity costs. Think about not just now, but also in the future. Profit is what a business has left over after receiving sales revenue and paying all business expenses as well as taxes. Profits are typically a very small part of the product selling price. We saw $8 out of every 100, $8. Yet, they provide the motivation for business owners to increase production capacity, improve product quality, create new products, improve efficiency, reward owners, reward employees. Lots and lots of things are done with that $8 on average. So when a business is profitable, everybody benefits. Owners, the customers, the employees, the suppliers, the community. And I would suggest to you that that is the most ethical outcome of all. Thanks for your participation. Really appreciate lots of good hands here. I guess to you, Elizabeth. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.